I'm Tim Doyle, and you're watching The Rebound with Matt Doherty.
Welcome to The Rebound with Coach Matt Doherty.
Welcome to The Rebound. I'm Matt Doherty, and I'll be your host. On this show, we focus on the topic of leadership and overcoming adversity in an open and raw kind of way. We discuss setbacks and how to rebound from them. With me today is someone who has had amazing success on the basketball court in high school and college, and now works in the broadcast booth for CBS Sports. Tim Doyle. Tim had a good career at Northwestern before becoming a top personality on CBS Sports, providing analysis with a focus on basketball. However, he's parlayed his lifelong interest in wagering into a daily feature on CBS Sportsline and is an expert analyst for most sports. He provides wagering advice daily, and his brand is growing. Tim, thank you for being on the show. Tell about how you became a pioneer in the gambling industry, in the sports gambling industry.
Yeah, it's interesting because as a player, and I'm sure you're aware of this, Matt, and thanks for having me. As a coach, betting and gambling is something that is always a no-no. And, when I started in broadcasting, because of the way I grew up, as my dad being a bartender and growing up around the bar life, I was always aware that there were spreads on games and there were lines on games and there were totals on games. And my father told me it's the only way to make a game interesting. And as I progressed through high school and through college, especially at Northwestern when I went there, because they had multiple scandals and they really scared me straight. And I did not make a sports bet that entire time. I actually remember, Matt, being in the forum with all the rest of the athletes, and they said, "Do you guys have any questions?" I was like this, I raised my hand. I go, "Can I bet on horses?" And they go, "Yes, you can, but we're not going to push that." I go, "Okay, as long as I can bet on horses." So we're about 35 minutes from Arlington Park, so I frequented out there. So my pivot towards sports betting really was about 6 years ago, where I was getting some okay games and Atlantic 10 games and some Mid-American Conference games, but I knew I had something that no one else had, and I really understood sports betting. But I had a sort of credibility in the space that no one else had because I played.
Let's pull this back. We got to start with your dad. All right. I know your dad. His nickname was Big Dan. Your dad, 6'8", 6'7", played at Belmont Abbey, was the only player drafted into the NBA from Belmont Abbey. Al McGuire's first recruit to Belmont Abbey. And he goes to tending bar and is basically a professional gambler. How old were you when you realized that?
As early as I can remember, I'll tell you that. And, I remember reading the pitching form to him up and down. And, New York, Matt, this growing up there, that's a baseball town.
Right.
It's not a football town like so many other cities in America or basketball. It's a baseball town. So my earliest memories of reading the New York Post and going through the pictures and telling them who's left-handed and who's right-handed. And, it was a very unique childhood, to say the least. I definitely grew up with some personalities like Johnny the Mustache and Bobby Death and Michael Northfield. And I was always told by my dad, don't ever ask anybody exactly what their profession is. I go, okay. So my whole life, I never really asked anybody what they did for a job until I became later an adult. So it was a very unique way to grow up. It was a different way. And now that I have 3 children of my own, I look back on my own childhood and I smile, but I go, wow, that was definitely different than most people's.
I love your dad. I mean, you saw him coming a mile away. And, he'd tap you on the shoulder with the back of his hand and say, Matty, call me Matty. And, those guys are a bunch of bums. They're stiffs, and just New York through. Tell me the line he said to you about never taking you to the zoo.
He used to tell my mom that we used to go out when we went to Belmont Park or Aqueduct to bet the horses for the day. He goes, "Now we looked at some animals today. Please go home and tell Mom we went to the zoo today." So I go, "All right, we went to the zoo." But you want to know something, Matt? That wasn't the worst thing he did. He took me to Times Square when I was a kid. He put the Mickey Mouse ears on me, and he had some bum Mickey Mouse take a picture of me. In my entire life, he always went to the Polaroid. He goes, oh, yeah, we went to Disneyland. Because, January, come around, I go, oh, my friends are going to Disneyland. He goes, look at the picture. You went there, pal. You just don't remember it. You were on the teacups the whole 9 yards. I go, oh, yeah, I think I kind of remember it.
Yeah. Well, in the newspaper, it said that you never went to the zoo. He said, I never took you to the zoo, but I took you to the park, Belmont Park. Just classic New York. How old were you when you placed your first bet?
Oh, my God. I know the bet. It was Bills, Giants, and Scott Norwood missed the field goal wide right. And that was my first wager. And you want to know something was kind of ironic, the way to lose like that. He thought that would maybe push me down another path, but it was so interesting, and I was so intrigued by it. But I think it's an amazing way, and all kidding aside, and now that it's become legal and it's going to be federally legal at some point, I think sports betting is an amazing way to make something that maybe is not that interesting, as long as you stay within a reason and a limit.
It's like drinking and drugs, right? I mean, you could drink a beer, but if you have too many, you get in trouble.
And in this country, it's interesting. You can vote, you fire a gun, don't have a Miller Lite, don't make a sports bet. It's like, some things are kind of hard to explain, but I think it's been an amazing tool if you want to make for entertainment value. And it's not going anywhere, by the way, Matt. It's only going to get bigger and bigger. Sports betting is. You're
a basketball analyst. You've been a player. How do you look at a game maybe differently than a normal bettor who doesn't have your background? What do you look for?
Great question. And when I started working at the Big Ten Network, my first year out of college, I started working with the legendary Purdue coach, Gene Cady, who I found out, Matt, that was actually hair extensions that he clipped onto the side, and then he just whipped it over, okay?
Really? He had a good comb over.
Yeah, he had something going on, right? He goes, why are you always making fun of my hair? So we would go out after the show, and then he would have two makers. I would have two makers. He would go to bed, and then I would go out all night with a pretty good head start. But he did tell me this, and this is what I take to a lot when I look at gambling. And you know this as a coach. It's not who you play. It's when you play them. Are you playing a team that maybe is missing their star player? Are you playing a team that's won 4 in a row and they're feeling great about themselves? Are you playing a team that 2 guys just got thrown off and it's actually better for team chemistry? He goes, it's not who you play. It's when you play them. So you got to be able to find those waves with teams, because all teams do it. Teams change throughout the season. You can go from bad to good. You can go from good to bad, back to good again throughout the year. Now, most important about Gene, I'll leave you with this. He came to my wedding and gave me a cash gift. Because if you're going to come to a Doyle wedding, don't show up with no salad plates. They'll be giving out cash
envelopes. Cash money, right? What was the biggest bet you ever made, or biggest bet you ever won that you're most proud of?
Yeah, 11 years ago. I know the one. It was June 15th, 2013. And it was when my wife came walking down the aisle. I went, oh, this is a huge gamble for her. And I knew it was a big bet for myself. And I remember thinking oh, man, is this a really good idea? And it ended up, we're still going strong after 11 years. We've been happy for about, 7.5. But, we have 3 beautiful children, and we're trying to move forward.
Well, listen, we're going to go to break here. And when Tim comes back, he's going to tell us the biggest rebound of his life. OMJ Clothing is an elite men's clothing store that provides a vast array of spectacular brands of men's lifestyle apparel for every day. Elevate your business upscale casual at OMJ. Success comes from standing out. The Rebound is sponsored by Sector Spider ETFs, a unique family of exchange-traded funds that divide the S&P 500 into 11 sector index funds. You can buy just the sectors you like or customize the S&P 500 by weighting the 11 sectors to meet your financial objective. Please visit them on the web at sectorspiders.com. That's sector, SPDRS.com.
Alps Portfolio Solutions Distributor, a registered broker-dealer, is the distributor for the Select Sector Spider Trust.
Tim Doyle, what is the biggest rebound of your life?
Yeah, the biggest rebound of my life comes in the form of having a child that was born when I was younger. You say handicapped, now disabled. And those are words that I never really loved and I'm still trying to get used to, but I like to call it different challenges. And, when he was diagnosed, not as a baby, but as an infant, my wife and I really didn't know how to handle it. And you talked about my dad earlier, and his dad was from Ireland, and let's just say they didn't express themselves extremely well. I think all Irish guys have a tough time expressing themselves. And I had a difficult time with it for many years. And I remember my father saying, I really can't hear about your son's struggles. It's a little too difficult for me.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, it's pretty difficult for myself.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was going through a hard time financially in my career. I had lost my job. I had changed careers. My wife had to go back to work. And I never thought that I would seek support from outside of my circle.
Yeah.
And I really got an amazing support from Twitter. And I built a Twitter page for my son at Chicago Joe Doyle. And we started doing bets on camera, and he loved it. It was a way to build our connection and our bond. And it was really something that really I look back on a time that was pretty dark in my life. And I appreciate all the people out there on social media that was just giving me that little pat on the shoulder to keep moving forward. And now he's 9 years old and he's on a basketball team. He's just been through his fifth surgery, his third surgery in a year, and he's going to live a really normal life and a productive life, but it has definitely been something I've had to rebound from in my lifetime.
So many questions, and I've got to ask for the audience, but I'm part of the audience here. Financially, you lose your job. You're a broadcaster. I've been a broadcaster. They don't give you insurance in most cases. You're going to have to get that on your own. What were the bills like? How did they stack up, and how did you manage that?
Yeah, it was definitely a crossroads of my career. And at that point, I decided that broadcasting was going to become a hobby for me. Mm-hmm. And I was going to treat it as a hobby. And I took a job as a salesman, and I knew I could make it work. Because when you coach on a sideline, when you perform on TV, you have a skill that a lot of people may never acquire because they've never been in that spot before. But in any sales job you're going to take, it's going to take 6 months, it's going to take 12 months, it's going to take 18 months to learn the product and build relationships. So it was interesting going to bed during that time because I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it just took a long time to get there. And when I moved broadcasting to a hobby, Matt, that was really when my broadcasting career started to take off because I could take some chances on air with my very unique personality.
What was the lowest point for you? Bring us there. Tell us what it was. Who was there? Was it at night? What is it during the day? In your bed? In a car? Where were you?
Yeah, I mean, my lowest point was, this isn't really easy to talk about, but, my lowest point is when my wife came to me and she goes, someone just handed us a notice that we haven't paid the mortgage in a few months. What's going on? And at that point, especially as a male or the provider for the family, you're just like, and then I had to have an honest conversation because I was keeping it from her because once again, I knew I was going to be able to get myself out of this hole, but I was like, I was in quicksand. And, that was just the day that you're like, I had to meet the piper. And that was obviously a crossroads in our relationship as well. So we have a kid with challenges. We have no money. It was like, wow, could this be going any worse? But then to rebound, to your point, and that word is so interesting, and to turn it all around is, probably the thing I'm most proud of in my life.
Besides Susie, your wife, who was there for you? Besides the Twitter community, a name, give me a name, somebody who was there, maybe somebody you didn't even expect that came out of nowhere to lend some emotional and or financial support.
Yeah, I think that this is an easy answer. It's my older brother, Dan, and I'll pay him homage first and foremost. And when you grow up with a dad who's got a personality like that, it was challenging for me to learn how to channel that. And him being 12 years older than me, I'm 41, he's 53, and him having his own ups and downs and rebounding. Here's a guy who had brain surgery, had to learn how to walk again, had to learn how to talk again. And, he was struck with COVID really seriously in the hospital. So he had multiple times he faced death. And he had just a very unique outlook on life. And it really opened my eyes, because here's a guy who's been given maybe a second chance, maybe a third chance. And he really changed my life. And ironically enough, we took a picture together on the beach that I got printed. And he looks 12 years younger than me. And I look 12 years older than him. And that picture right there changed my life as well. And that guy who's in that picture nearly 4 years ago, I'm never going back to that again.
What did you learn? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about your wife? What did you learn about your faith through that rebound journey?
Great question. I say this, when you have a kid with a challenge or disability, early on, Matt, people said, well, this is a gift. And I used to just walk away from that. I go, this gift sucks. I don't like this gift at all. I don't want this gift. And now that I'm 9 years into my son, I realize what the gift is. I'm able to see other people and their challenges. And I'm more empathetic. Yeah. I think as men, there's a lack of empathy because we have to be driven. We have to be the gatherers. We gotta get the food. We have to provide. So, brush those people off. Don't worry about that. Don't show emotion. And then going through that, I have a level of empathy, no matter what it is. I'm like, I could see two sides to every story. And that ended up, Matt, being the gift that I got. And I'm so grateful for that. So I've tried to inspire people in ways to, improve themselves. And my son has allowed me, and I say this to people all the time, I'll finish with this. My son has allowed me to see the best version of myself.
Repeat that.
Yeah, my son has allowed me to see the best version of myself.
And what is that version?
Someone who's a team. You watch me play. How would you describe my basketball game?
You were a hot dog who loved to pass, but it better be the home run pass. And I didn't know if you were left-handed or right-handed. So you shot the ball with either hand. You were amphibious, as some people used to say in the ACC. Yeah, you were flair. Everything was try to be a highlight play.
Yeah, and I always prided myself on being a team guy and being a passer and getting others involved. And now, you asked me what I've learned from that. I think I see myself as still being a good teammate and still, I played on some fantastic teams when you were recruiting other guys. I was on the sideline there. I was I'm running to chase down the postman. Where's my letter from North Carolina? I'd go, it was like, I was like Rudy. I was going through all my mail like this every time. I go, no letter from North Carolina. But it
got lost in the mail. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I played with Curtis Sumter and Jason Frazier and Taquan Dean, and we won every tournament. And I prided myself on being a glue guy. And you remember those teams.
I recruited the mess out of Jason Frazier, and he broke my heart when he went to Villanova. And Curtis Sumter, I probably should have recruited him harder because he had a good career at Villanova, and you would have drove me crazy.
So I never got any letters from you. So I did come on today to talk to you, to pick a bone that, if we're going to be airing of the grievances, if this is going to be Festivus, I'm still waiting for my letter from North Carolina.
All right. Well, I'll get your address after the show and I'll shoot you a letter. We've got about 3 minutes left. You and I do share a bond. We're both white basketball players that grew up on Long Island, played in the city. I was, I think, the only white guy. Maybe I played on Riverside Church. You played on a Long Island AAU team where you may have been the only white guy. What was that like? And then you played at Rucker Park. That's one of my biggest regrets. I never went to Harlem to play in Rucker Park. Why did you do that? What was it like for you? What you learned from it?
Oh my God. Just because you told the Jason Frazier story, I'll tell a story that I have not told publicly too much. So I get a call to play at Rucker Park, and it was like a noon tip. And I lived on Long Island off of the Southern State Parkway, exit 24N. Jason Frazier lived in Amityville, which was about 6 exits, but the wrong direction
Right.
towards
Yeah, out there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was supposed to pick him up at the McDonald's and bring him to Rucker Park when I was going up there. So I drove a black 1986 black sedan Cadillac. I was driving out to Amityville, and I went, wait
a second. You're driving a black caddy?
Yeah, but very similar to a hearse, like one of those long sedans. So,
Fleetwood,
exactly. So, and by the way, this is 2002, so it was like an antique at that time. Okay, so I'm driving out to pick up Jason Frazier, and I say to myself, I go, "Wait, he's going to take every shot. He's probably going to play every minute. He's probably going to be the MVP." Whoop! U-turn. Go pick him up. Go up to Rucker Park. And get up there.
Wait a second. You didn't pick him up?
No, I didn't pick him up. So I get to the park and everyone goes, well, "Where's Jason Frazier?" I go, I was at the Burger King. You got to remember, there's no cell phones then. Right. They said, "Oh, he was at the McDonald's." I go, "Sorry about that." So I ended up playing the whole game. I ended up getting the MVP. And then I ended up in a book called Asphalt Gods, where they wrote 5 or so. Thank you, Jason Frazier. I'm sorry I didn't pick you up that day, pal, but he did pretty good. All right.
It's a beautiful story. And it's not surprising. The son of Big Dan Doyle, Tim Doyle, does an okey doke on Jason Frazier, All-American high school basketball player, does a Huey on the Southern State in a black caddy Fleetwood. Not surprised. 40 seconds to go. What question should I have asked you, Tim Doyle, that I didn't?
I think it's interesting how we grew up. And, you talked about before who had an influence on me. Your brother, John, and I have connected over our different challenges with kids. And I think the way we grew up, so blue collar and nothing handed to us. And, now I've lived in the Midwest for 22 years. I always try to tell kids that I mentor, and I have about 5 boys now that I mentor, you got to go out and grab it. No one's going to hand you anything. I don't care if you graduate from the best school in the world. You got to go out and you got to go get it yourself. And that's a mentality because of the neighborhood that you and I grew up in, Matt. Nothing was handed to us. We went out there and we grabbed it.
Wow. I could go on and on. Tim, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Matt. It was a blast.
Leadership is a learned behavior. We all lead in some way, shape, or form. We all deal with adversity. And when you do, I challenge you to rebound. I challenge you to learn and grow. If you'd like to contact me, you can reach me at dohertycoaching.com. That's DOHERTY.com. Thanks for tuning in.